Hello, so good evening everyone. So we're trying to do a masterclass in general revision or key areas for government in JAM. So we have to pay rapt attention. Since we are racing with time, we have to try to make it like cogent points, just key points. Points that from topics that are often repeated in JAM. So we'll be starting with the nature of government and the state. So when we say government, we have three definitions. So government as an institution of the state. This is the machinery or the organ or arm that is set up to organize the society or make and enforce law. And government as an art of governing is a process. It carries the function of carrying out state business, lawmaking, implementation, and education. And government as an academic discipline. That's political science. It is the study of political behavior, public admin, and international relationship. So let's look at the state and a nation. What's the difference between a state and a nation? So when we're talking about a state has population, territory, government, and sovereignty. And the origin theories are divine rights, force, social contracts, like Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. While a state is abstract, it is permanent and possesses sovereignty. Then a nation is a group with shared culture, history, language, and emotions. A nation is psychological, meaning it can exist without a territory. Like the Jews before Israel. Before Israel was established as a country, the Jews did not have a specific place, but it was still a nation and it still existed. So a nation does not necessarily have a territory, but a state must have a territory. While a nation does not necessarily need to have a territory. So what are the difference between a state and a nation? State has four elements. It has the population, territory, government, and sovereignty. While nation is mainly cultural, emotional unity. So a multi-ethnic state like Nigeria can have many nations. So sovereignty power over a specific area is a state that has that, not a nation. So we now go to sovereignty. When we say sovereignty, what does sovereignty mean? Sovereignty is the absolute supreme power of a state to make, enforce laws without external interference. Sovereignty is when the country has the ability, the state has the ability to actually make its own law without collecting order from another country or another state. So the origin of sovereignty is Jean Bodin, who is a French philosopher. So we have kinds of sovereignty. The first one is the internal sovereignty, and that's the supreme power that is within the state. While external sovereignty, that is the freedom from external control. So what are the things that limit sovereignty? We have constitution, public opinion, international law and organizations, military interventions, custom and tradition. We will now go to basic concepts in government. So go to power and authority. When we say power, power is the ability to compel obedience using force, influence, or sanctions. So kinds of power, we have political power, economic power, physical power, military power, etc. The sources of power. Power can be gotten from constitution, coercion, that is coup, charisma, economic resources, inheritance, etc. While authority is the legitimate legal right to command based on consent. So types of authority, according to Max Weber, we have one, traditional. And traditional authority is gotten from customs, chiefs, etc. Then charismatic. Charismatic is the person's personal ability or eloquence. Then the third type of authority is the legal or rational, and this is gotten from constitution or law. The fourth one is delegated, and that is given from higher authority. And the fifth one is technical, that's your expertise. So what's the difference between power and authority? Power is coercion, it is authority. It is coercion, it involves kind of like force or something like that. While authority is legitimate and it is persuasive. So we continue with colonial Nigeria. So we're looking at the British conquest and administration. So Lagos became a crown colony in 1861, and then the Charter of Royal Niger Company was revoked in 1900. So the British took direct control. In 1906, Lagos Colony and Southern Protectorate were merged, and then the amalgamation of Northern and Southern Protectorates by Lord Lugard happened in 1914. The crown colonies were the territory directly administered by Britain, and then the protectorates, they are the territory with local ruler, but under British protection. So say the British made use of the indirect rule. We are talking of indirect rule. What's the meaning of indirect rule? So say indirect rule is the rule in true traditional rulers, where the British they actually made use of intermediaries. So the traditional ruler were like the people that the British passed through to get to the regular people. And then it was architectured by Sir Frederick Lord Lugard and introduced it to the northern Nigeria in 1900. And it was introduced because of lack of finance and personnel, because the people that they had was too vast, was too small compared to the vastness of or size of Nigeria. And then language barriers also. And then it persisted with centralized system in the north. So that north, their system of colonial administration rhymes with the indirect rule. So it was easy for it to prosper there. And then vast territory. So we are now looking at why did it succeed in the north. Firstly, without centralized authorities, the emirs. Without centralized authorities, which are the emirs, existing tax systems, and then non-interference with Islamic religion. It did not interfere with Islamic religion. And then absence of educated elite. But why did it now fail in the south? In the west, it had partial success because the educated elite, the opposite. While in the east, it failed completely because the east, normal, their colonial administration does not have centralized authority. And also the warrant chief, those were the foreign institutions, they were corrupt and oppressive, and that was what led to the Aba Women riot of 1929, where the women rioted against taxation. So what are the merits of indirect rule? It is cheap and it preserves traditional institution, while the demerit is strengthened divide and rule, and it excluded educated elites, and it also delayed independence. They will now move to the French colonial policy, that's assimilation. So see the French, the policy of assimilation, it replaced African culture with French culture. The direct rule, and it made use of direct rule, and it was centralized at Dakar, which was the Federation of French West Africa. And it's different from British indirect rule because while their own use many personnel and it has no respect for traditional ruler, the British indirect rule had few personnel and it respected traditional rulers. The assimilation failed because the Africans were proud of their culture and it was costly. And then the rise of nationalists and also the Muslim opposed French education. Then we move to nationalism and constitutional development. So nationalism is the consciousness and struggle to attain self-rule from colonial powers. Then the factors that aid nationalism, the first one is economic expectations like taxation, forced labor, etc. Then we move to social factors, those are like Western education, which is the most important legacy. Then the third one is Second World War. The Second World War, these people that fought alongside the Europeans, they saw them that there's nothing special about them, so they can actually rescue their country from them. Also Pan-Africanism, people like Marcus Garvey, W.B. Du Bois, etc. Then the fifth one, Italian invasion of Ethiopia in 1935. The sixth one, the Atlantic Charter in 1941, which was the right to self-determination. And lastly, the Indian independence in 1947 gingered Africa that they can gain independence. So look at some key nationalists. The first one is Abat Macaulay. Abat Macaulay founded NNDP in 1923, which was the first political party, but it was later changed to NCNC. Then Nnamdi Azikiwe, which is popularly known as Zik, was the first governor general and also the first ceremonial president of Nigeria through NCNC. Bafemi Awolowo, the Action Group, was the premier of Western region. Ahmadu Bello was the Sardauna of Sokoto, MPC, that is, and was the premier of Northern region. So look at constitutional development. So we'll be looking at all the constitutions that existed and we'll try to look at some key points about them. So the first constitution was the Clifford Constitution and it was done in 1922. It was the first constitution of Nigeria and it introduced elective principle, which is franchise, right to vote. And it had 4 elective seats, 3 in Lagos and 1 in Calabar. But property and income were restricted and NNDP was formed with this constitution. And the Legislative Council was for South only. The North were ruled by proclamation. Then we now move to the Richard Constitution. The Richard Constitution was done in 1946 and it was one that introduced regionalism. So 3 regions were established, the North, East and West. And the regional assemblies, although the regional assemblies cannot make law, they are only to provide advice. And it was the first unofficial majority in Legislative Council. Then Macpherson Constitution, it happened in 1951. This one gave the regional assemblies power to make law, and it also established the Central House of Representatives and the Third Council of Ministers, which were 12 Nigerian ministers. And this was the first constitution Nigerians were consulted on, but it collapsed in 1953 due to self-rule, motion for self-rule by Anthony Enahoro, Kano riot, and Eastern crisis. Then moved to the Newton Constitution. This happened in 1954. This was formally established Nigeria as a federation. So it was one that formally established Nigeria as a federation. And then there was division of power between the federal state and local, where we have the exclusive, concurrent, and the residual list. And then the regional premiers were also created, and civil service were regionalized. Then moved to the Independence Constitution in 1960. This one recognized the Queen of England as the head of state, but she was represented by Governor General, which is Nnamdi Azikiwe, while Tafawa Balewa was the head of government. and the Westminster parliamentary system. The Westminster parliamentary system and the private court in London was our final court of appeal. They will now move to the Republican Constitution. This happened in 1963. Nigeria became a republic. So the Queen was replaced by a ceremonial president Nnamdi Azikiwe, and then that private council was abolished, and then the Supreme Court in Nigeria became the highest court. So we now move to Nigerian federalism. So we say federalism was adopted in 1954 in the Littleton Constitution, and then federalism was important because of multi-ethnic diversity, fear of domination by a minority, desire for local autonomy. Nigeria is very large, vast territory, and then complementary of natural resources. What are the problems of Nigerian federalism? One, revenue allocation, how to share national wealth, derivation, equality, and population. Two, minority issue and state creation. Wheeling Commission in 1957 to 1958, it recommended that no new state must be formed before independence so that they can protect the fundamental rights of minorities. Then the third one is the ethnic rivalry and secession, like the Civil War in 1967 to 1970. So let's now look at state creations. So in 1963, 4 regions were created. The Midwest was created. In 1967, 12 states were created during the Gowon regime, and it abolished regions. So we now move from region to state in the Gowon regime in 1967. 1976, 19 states were created during the Muritala and Obasanjo regime. In 1987, 21 states were created under Babangida. In 1991, 30 states were created. 1996, 36 states were created under Abacha. So now go to the Wheeling Commission, 1957 to 1958, and this was set up to address minority fears, and it was headed by Sir Henry Wheeling. So move to political parties in Nigeria, the First and Second Republic. So First Republic parties, that was from 1960 to 1966. So the first party was the NNDP, that's the Nigerian National Democratic Party. And it was founded in 1923 by Herbert Macaulay, and it dominated Lagos. Then you have the NYM, that is the Nigerian Youth Movement. It was founded in 1936, and the leader was Ernest Ikoli. And the region dominated was nationally. And then the ideology, it wanted to be the first truly national movement, but it collapsed due to leadership crisis. Then the third one is the NCNC, National Council of Nigeria and Cameroon. It was founded in 1944 by Herbert Macaulay and Nnamdi Azikiwe, and its region that it dominated was the East, and its ideology was that it wanted to dominate the Eastern region. Then the fourth one is NPC, that's the Northern People's Congress, and it was founded in 1949 by Ahmad Bello, and the region it dominated was the North. So it dominated the Northern region, and it is conservative and traditional. Then the next one is the AG, that's the Action Group. It was founded in 1951 by Obafemi Awolowo, and the region it intended to dominate was the West, and it dominated Western region. It was progressive and social democratic. Then the next one is the NEPU, Northern Elements Progressive Union, and it was founded in 1950 by Aminu Kano, and the region it wanted to dominate is the North, the minority in the North. It was radical, it opposed traditional ruler, the Talakawa. Those ones are the common people. UNBC, that's the United Middle Belt Congress. It was founded by Joseph Taka, and its region was the Middle Belt. It represented the minority, and it demanded separate region. Then the next one is the NNDP. That's the Nigerian National Democratic Party. It was founded in 1964 by Samuel Akintola, and the region it intended to dominate was the West, and it was formed after AG crisis, and it formed an alliance with NCNC. The 1964 federal election and 1965 Western election, the rigging led to political instability, and this paved way for 1966 coup. In 1962 AG crisis, it happened between Obafemi Awolowo and Nestle Akintola, and this led to a state of emergency in the West. The First Republic parties, we've looked at all of them now. So now move to the Second Republic Party. The Second Republic Party, the first one is the NPN. That's the National Party of Nigeria, and the leader was Shehu Shagari, and the ideology was conservatism, free enterprise, and 7 states were won, and it also won presidency. And the next one is the UPN, the Unity Party of Nigeria. It was founded by Obafemi Awolowo, and the ideology was free education, free health, full employment, and it had five states: Lagos, Oyo, Ogun, Ondo, and Bendel. Next one is NPP, that's the Nigerian People's Party. The leader was Nnamdi Azikwe. It was a secular state and equal opportunity, and it had three states: Anambra, Plateau, and Imo. The next one is PRP, that's the People's Redemption Party. It was founded by Aminu Kano, and it was a socialist oriented party, and the state is controlled with Kano and Kaduna. The next one is GMPP, that's the Great Nigeria's People's Party. The leader is Ibrahim Waziri, and the ideology was centrist and is controlled Borno and Gongola states. Then the next one is NAP, that's the Nigeria Advanced Party, and the leader was Tunji Braiwit, and it controlled no states. The ideology is also not known. The 1979 constitution, this one created executive president, and the first executive president of Nigeria was Shehu Shagari, while Nnamdi Azikiwe was the first ceremonial president. Then bicameral National Assembly also, so Nigeria now had the Senate and House of Rep, and then 19 states were created in the 1979 constitution. The 1983 coup, Buhari and Idi Agbon, they overthrew Shagari's MPN government. Then we'll move to military rule in Nigeria. The first coup in Nigeria happened in January 15, 1966, and Iransi took power. They killed Tafawa Balewa, who was the prime minister, Ahmadu Bello, who was the premier of the northern region, and Akintola, who was the premier of the western region. The Iransi unified decree number 34, and he abolished federalism, and this led to counter coup. And this counter coup was the second coup. It happened in July 1966, and Gowon took over. In Gowon regime, it lasted from 1966 to 1975, and he created 12 states in 1967. He led Nigeria through civil war, and he created the NYSC, National Youth Service Corps, for national integration. And then we now move to the Muritala Obasanjo regime. He increased the states to 19 in 1976. He also did the local government reform in 1976. He did the Operation Feed the Nation. He did the war against indiscipline. He transferred power to civilian Shagari. Then moved to the Buhari Idi Agbon regime. Those ones, they were the one that overthrew Shagari. And they established the war against indiscipline. The war against indiscipline that Obasanjo did, they continue it. The next one is the Babangida regime. This happened in 1985 to 1993. And they created the 1989 constitution, although that constitution was not used. And then it created two-party system, that's the SDP and NRC. In June 12, 1993, presidential election was annulled, although it was won by MK Abiola through SDP party. Then it also opted for A4 voting system. Then the NEC was one that conducted the election, the National Electoral Commission. Then we move to the Abacha regime 1993 to 1998. It created 6 more states, so altogether we had 36 states. So now look at features of military government. It had fusion of executive and legislative. So the military leader has the power of the executive and the legislative. And then the decrees are laws. Suspension of constitution. It is highly centralized. There are no fundamental rights. Instabilities, so the government coup can happen, counter coup can also happen, so governments can change anytime. The military, they used to intervene because of breakdown of law and order, also through political corruption and mismanagement of economy, and also through personal ambition. So now move to Nigerian foreign policy and international organization. So we say Africa as the centerpiece. Nigeria is not formally aligned with any power bloc, either the East or West. So this is to promote So let's look at some key foreign policy action. The concept of medium power, which was advocated by Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. Economic diplomacy, it was introduced by Major General Ike Nwachukwu. Nationalization of British Petroleum and Barclays Bank in 1978. over British link with South Africa. Then support for MPLA in Angola in 1975 against USA or South Africa. ECOMOG led peacekeeping in Liberia and Sierra Leone. Chad conflict, we also participated in OAU peacekeeping force in 1981. So let's look at some international organizations. United Nations. So United Nations was founded in 1945 and it replaced the League of Nations, and the headquarters is in New York, USA. The main aim is international peace and security, and the General Assembly, it has full representation. That's the full representation. Then there is the Security Council. The Security Council consists of 5 permanent states, and those states are US, UK, France, Russia, and China, and they have veto power. Then we also have the Trusteeship Council, which oversees decolonization. So the second international organization is the OAU, which is the Organization of African Unity. It was founded in 1963 and it was founded by 32 states. The headquarters is in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. It was replaced by AU, African Union, in 2002. The main aim is to end colonialism and promote unity. The Assembly of Head of States is the highest organ, and then it also have the Council of Ministers and Liberation Committee, which is in Dar es Salaam. Then the next one is ECOWAS. ECOWAS is Economic Community of West African States. It was founded in 1975, the Lagos Treaty, and then the headquarters is in Abuja, Nigeria. The main aim is economic integration, the ECOMOG, which is for peacekeeping, and then free movement of persons, and that's its major achievement. Then we move to the Commonwealth of Nations. The Commonwealth of Nations was founded in 1931. So it is the British Commonwealth, is all the states that are colonized by Britain. Headquarters is in London, UK. The Queen of England is the ceremonial head, while the members are former British colony plus a few others like Rwanda. The next one is OPEC. OPEC is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. It was founded in 1960. The headquarters is in Vienna, Austria. The founding members are Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, etc. And then the main aim is to unify oil policy and stabilize price. So now then the last one is some UN agencies like UNESCO, which is for education, science and culture, WHO, which is for health, ILO, which is for labor, FAO, which is for food and agriculture, UNICEF, which is for children, IMF, which is for financial stability, World Bank, which is for development. So that's it.